All right. What's good, y'all? Uh, Having some technical issues today, but I hope everybody's well. Shout out to the brothers who came through early. Appreciate the support. Like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the show if you would, so we can continue to bring you this independent black male thought. So, welcome back to the Onyx Report, Black Masculinist news for the day. Shout out to I'm Listening. Shout out to Mr. Me Too. Indigo Flow was good. Gabriel. Let's see. Got Joshua in the house. Money Mike, what's going on? Ron, no one, what's up? Spain Man, Electrician, 480. What's going on? Some brothers coming through. Appreciate that support, Mr. Me Too. Salute to the good doctor. Thanks for the word. Appreciate that. Hey Rue, what's going on? So, yeah, my system is being a little unpredictable today, so hopefully it'll work through. But anyway, we're just gonna get through. We're gonna have to have a little conversation about some stuff that I hope you guys will participate in. I'm gonna go ahead and bring in the good brother himself, because I enjoy talking to him this much. So it is what it is. It's always a pleasure to do so. What's good with you, man? BGS, can you hear me?
Oh, muted. Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm like, man, my system is playing all kinds of games.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's man, it's just wait a minute. This is a mess, man. Even
Yeah, when you don't do it in your regular time, this is what happens.
my yeah, it does seem to be that way. It really does. Because it is throwing my whole system is acting a fool right now. Um, I damn near want to just reboot everything, but this is ridiculous. Shit. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're here.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna try and get this in. I just trying to figure out what exactly is going on so we can actually have this discussion. 99 2019. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today, and again, like, share, subscribe, join, and donate, support the show. You guys can see the various ways to do so. You know, you got the super chat, you got the Venmo, you got the PayPal, the Cash App. You know what to do. Support it, so we can continue to keep bringing it to you. What's up, Stardust? There's a number of people in here, but I don't know if you had a chance to see this. I wanted to share this with you because I thought it was interesting, just to
Mm-hmm.
kind of look at how black men are being talked about, shown. Oh, I guess they changed the little design here. All right. So anyway, all right. It looks like StreamYard may have changed the settings. So I don't know if you had a chance to see this. So this is Washington Street Journal, and they did pretty much two versions of the same article. Right. It's called "Murders of Black Women Rose During the Pandemic. So did their unsolved cases." Right. Victims' families set out to find killers as authorities grapple with shift in clearance rates. We'll
Mm-hmm.
talk about what that is. But this is actually not the article itself. This is kind of like a little PowerPoint they did of it. So, if you click this arrow over here, it takes you to individual cases. Appreciate the Cash App, Charles. Thank you for that. Right. It says when homicides surged across America during the pandemic, murders of black women and girls rose more dramatically than other groups. You can see it says at the same time, the proportion of those killings solved by police fell faster than other demographics in nearly 2 dozen cities. And what they're doing here, I don't know if you can see the little tick marks at the top of the screen here, but they've done kind of like a PowerPoint breakdown of the
Mm-hmm.
entire article. So if you're not going to read the article, they're going to give you a condensed visual presentation of it just to
Oh,
make sure.
Cliff Notes, huh?
Yeah, you're getting cliff notes. Yeah, I haven't seen this much. I haven't seen this much. I don't know if this is something that's people are starting to do more across the board, but I have
Yeah,
not seen this.
shorter attention spans and more visual. So people don't read as much or willing to read as much. So they're trying to make it more digestible to still bring in eyeballs.
Yeah, they definitely are. It's just not something I've seen very much of. And so I find it interesting. So it says 2,077 Black women and girls were killed in 2021, 51% increase over 2019, the largest jump of any racial or gender group during that period, according to the CDC. Overall, the number of killings nationwide increased 34% during that time frame. So the numbers of killings nationwide increased 34%. And so they're showing you alongside these bullet points that are really pulled straight out of the article,
Mm-hmm.
pictures of the various women that are still crusading on behalf of those that have been that were killed.
Uh-huh.
And so first and foremost, I want to say that I don't that I respect, what these women are doing, and I'm saddened by the unnecessary death, really, of any Black person, but these women in particular. So it's not about. I'm not here to disrespect that. I just find it interesting to see how certain things are presented and others aren't, right? So 89%. Meanwhile, the number of unsolved homicides of Black women and girls rose by 89% in 2020 and 2021 compared with 2018 and 2019, according to a survey of 21 U.S. cities by the Wall Street Journal.
Mm.
Okay, let's see. Says far bigger increase than any other demographic group. These are basically quotes just pulled straight out of the article.
Right.
So I'm just kind of clip through a few of these, and so you get to see, the people lamenting while you see the stats presented and you see the names of those that have passed. So if anybody's interested, this is something that to check out. A disparate group of Black women around the U.S. have started tracking killings and launching websites devoted to the unsolved murder. You can kind of see how these things are played. What is going?
And also, I think because people are inside more and had to be online a lot more to actually get their news and entertainment, I think a lot of these kind of things actually catch fire
What do you?
because you can actually focus more on it.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I just said it went in and out for a second. I'm just trying to make sure
Okay.
following what's going on. Yeah, my system's tripping. Anyway, a disparate group of Black women around the U.S. have started tracking killings and launching websites devoted to solving the murder. So the way the article presents it, because the police are not really going out of their way, and they even talk about, the police department, providing rewards for information around the killing of white women, but not doing so for Black women. So Black women started raising money themselves. They're creating their own websites. They're knocking on doors, trying to find information on people who've killed loved ones. And so, comparing, so, linking the images with some of the bullet points from the article,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, getting to those who don't read, but getting the point across nonetheless. And it's not, and I'm not mad about it. It is what it is. I just find it interesting.
Yeah.
So
Putting a face to the stats.
putting the face to the stats.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So you see the bullet points, and the black pages even highlight key information. I'm not going to go through all of it because I'm going to put the link in the description as I usually do after the video. So this is something you can see for yourself. But you get the point. You get the point. Now the article itself has the same beginning page, but when you scroll down, you get the text, right? And you'll see that everything we were talking about is just been pulled straight from it. Uh, so you can kind of see where all that goes. You over here making me hungry, man. Damn it. Anyway, let's see here. Here we go. All right. So you see the reward.
Mm-hmm.
Have some information listing that. But as you say, a lot of people aren't going to go through this. So they talk about, the $50,000 reward that officials announced when it came to the fatal stabbing of a white woman, white UCLA
Right.
grad student,
Uh-huh.
and the private donations brought it up to 250,000. And they captured and apprehended a suspect,
Mm-hmm.
whereas they didn't do that for black women. So the article kind of goes in depth there.
And they've said that before, right?
Mhm.
That and this, when you're in the education, I'm sure you've heard it that when it comes to black women versus white women, um, black women always take a back seat when it comes to crime that are committed against them. Whereas a
Right.
white woman, if she's missing, the whole thing about if a white girl is missing, then they'll move heaven and hell to find her. But if a
Hmm.
black girl is missing, nobody looks for her.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's some of the currency
Hmm.
behind being perceived actually as a woman.
Right.
Right. If you're not perceived as a woman, and we know in this country, it's the reason Dr. Curry named his book "The Man Not." Black
Hmm.
men were not seen as black men or as men,
Right.
and black women were not seen as women.
Right.
So the currency in being identified as a woman is you have this kind of generic chivalrous idea that tends to work in your favor, especially when it comes to resources, when it comes to finding somebody. I mean, I show a clip in my class of Patrice O'Neill, my favorite comedian, and he does a whole bit about how much you're worth if you ever go missing, how many people will go look for you. And he mentions this as he's talking about a white woman in the audience, and he walks up to a black woman and he asks her, you know, how long do you think they'd look for you if you went missing?
Hmm.
And he has this whole bit about it, and it's definitely dead on. So there's definitely a currency
Right.
around this whole question. But uh, this article lays out a whole nother area I haven't seen many people talk about, and that is this idea of clearance.
Hmm.
Where they clear cases, meaning that they've taken the case as far as it can go,
Right.
and it's kind of gone from there. So at one point they say the FBI, which reports annual crime data nationwide, doesn't fully track clearance rates by race and gender. The journal queried more than 30 cities across the U.S., including the nation's 10 largest. Most also said they don't track such data. 21 cities agreed to share both the number of homicides and the number of those cases cleared since
Hmm.
2018, along with race and gender of the victim. So this is a new area that they've been exploring in the last few years. Really, not just the number of victims, not just the number of people who are aggressors, but also the number of cases that are being cleared, right? And so they come to here. It says in these cities, the share of homicide cases for black women and girls cleared by police, either by arrest, charges filed, or identification of a suspect beyond the reach of authorities, fell to 59% in 2020 and 2021 from 67% in 2018 and 2019. In other words, they were clearing cases up to 67%, and then the pandemic hit and it dropped to 59. That means only 59% of cases resulted in an arrest, charges
Hmm.
filed, or identification of a suspect.
Right.
That's what it means to clear. It says clearance rates for white women and girls fell from 78% to 73. So
Mm.
women experienced a drop
Yeah.
in cases cleared during the pandemic, but black women a greater drop from 67 to 59,
Yeah.
almost a 10% drop. White women, about a 5% drop. This is the part I found interesting. It says clearance rates for men were lower to begin with, but saw smaller drops in that period or none at all, remaining at 58% for white men and boys and dropping from 45 to 41% for black men and boys, who had the lowest clearance rate of all.
Yeah. Of course.
That's
Why does
the,
it not surprise me?
not at all. Not
I've
at
been
all.
shocked. I've been shocked if it was even close.
But in an article where this, because really, here's the thing, and I've said this in different contexts.
Hmm.
This is the point of the article. If you could, so the article is two pointed. It points to more women dying during the pandemic, more black
Hmm.
women.
And biggest increase.
Well, just over 2,000 black women died during the pandemic, so
Yeah.
they were killed. That's the first part. The
Hmm.
second part is this sentence right here. Right, the number of cleared cases fell from 67% to 59. This
Hmm.
is so emblematic of what I talk about when I talk about the erasure of black men and boys. Because, and I don't know if you guys remember, I did a video a couple of years ago during the pandemic on an
Mm.
article that came out covering COVID cases, and they actually showed, even though the article was about black women, during the pandemic and the virus and so on and so forth.
Right.
Buried in the article, and like the last couple paragraphs of it was that black men were dying more than any other demographic.
Yep. Yep.
buried in the article. The article wasn't even about them. The point of the article wasn't even about them, even though black men had the highest numbers of deaths.
Right.
It wasn't the point of the article. So here we're looking at an article that's fixated on pointing out the vulnerability of black women and girls during the pandemic and the drop in cleared cases and buried, right? In case you didn't see it. So just gonna, you go through all of this before you get to this strange little half a sentence here. Black men had the lowest clearance rate of all.
Yeah.
And then it quickly jumps in the next sentence to a whole other subject. The overall homicide clearance rates in those 21 cities during that period fell to 49 from 51. They mention it in the latter half of a sentence,
Right.
right? They mention it. This is the sentence. They mention it in the latter part of the sentence and then quickly move on. And I just found it interesting. I'm like, man, how many articles do I see like this? And I don't even hear black men. Shout out to Ghetto User for the support. I don't even hear black men talk about these issues. We still got cases where people are being killed, people are being attacked. We still don't talk about it unless there's some kind of flair to it. So right now the big issue is, black male police have killed a black man. Everybody's talking about that.
Right.
But I see cases on a weekly basis, that highlight the vulnerability of black men and boys. I posted a lot in my social media, but I don't hear black men talk about it. So here I'm seeing articles from the Wall Street Journal that are highlighting the vulnerability of women and girls, and buried in the 3/4 into the article, you get half a sentence.
Yeah.
That says, only 41% of cases are cleared, the lowest rate of all. And nobody gives a damn.
No, there's nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not saying I don't want to see articles about black women, and that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, even in these articles that try to highlight, and they'll play with the numbers, do whatever they can to highlight. I mean, even in the midst of all of that, look at this title: "Murders of Black Women Rose During the Pandemic. The Solving of Their Cases Fell." Believe it or not, this is a hodgepodge of different areas that they're piecing together, almost like a little Frankenstein, to say, "Look, this group is vulnerable. This is how." The same thing, happened. I did a few months ago. I was doing one on education, and they were going out to point out, well, black girls are, they're disciplined more than any other group, and they're this and that. But it was only in comparison to white girls. So they hodgepodge, and the African American Policy Forum does this a lot. That's Kimberly Crenshaw's organization.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, they do this. They Frankenstein some numbers, and they put a provocative. It is what it is. That's the time period we're in. But then I run across something like this. Now this is a year old. And I mind you, I can count on one hand how many articles I found about the vulnerability of black men during the pandemic. One hand, I can count them. But this one came out a year ago, almost to the day. February 23rd, 2022. Homicide is pandemic's biggest killer of young black men. Right? So in the midst of the pandemic, the biggest issue is really black men killing black men. And, of course, what we're seeing now doesn't change any of that. Right? But as far as but now, before we delve into this, though, any thoughts about this?
Basically, they want to, it's always like you said, they use flat blackness to actually center black women and decenter black men. Yeah. Now the title is probably true that the biggest rate of increase of any group probably was black women. But the thing is, they started from such low numbers anyway. So it didn't take much for them to actually be the biggest increase. And it's not over like 20 years, it's over since the last couple of years.
Right.
So basically, it's a very narrow focus. But the thing is, they want to center black women. And so they, like you said, they have to jump through all kind of hoops to actually center black women. When the biggest problem, as you read, is black men.
Right.
But nobody wants to read that because it's like, what it is that a dog bites man, right? It happens every day. It's not as juicy and not as salacious, and it's not as appealing to women, and also not as appealing to black women.
Right. Right. Here, before I want to show you this before I go through that. Make mine a little bigger. So here's something I want you guys to take a look at. So this is top 10 causes of death. And I know this is going to be hard to see for some of you guys. So, I was trying to find a better way to, I won't let me. All right. So this is the top 10. Now, this is the top 10 leading causes of death from 1999 to 2019. So this is a 20-year period.
Mm-hmm.
This is focused on Black females, right? So top 10 causes of death. Now, I've shown these various charts for years, but in case this is your first time seeing them, you got the rank of severity listed from 1 to 10 on the left. And then for each age group, each column lists the top 10 causes of death for that age. So from age 10 to 14, right here in the middle, or close to the middle, you got unintentional injury as the top leading cause of death for age 10 to 14. And it goes downward from there. You can see heart disease, you can see suicide, you can see HIV in different parts of the column. So each age group has its own distinct top 10 causes of death. And of course, by the time you get over the age of 34, it's cancer and heart disease, which is the case for most demographics, but
Uh-huh.
you can see the specifics. Now, on the far right column, it's when you merge all ages, they kind of break down in the total numbers of deaths, the top 10 causes of death. So you look here, 769,000, right, for heart disease. That's the number one leading cause of death. And you find this to be the case for most, heart disease and cancer, right?
Right.
And it goes down. So you got cerebral vascular disease, diabetes, unintentional injury, nephritis, chronic low respiratory disease, Alzheimer's, septicemia, influenza. And this is the column we're looking at today, the one on the far right for all ages. What do you think is missing from this column?
Homicide.
Yeah. Now you can see the homicides in red from age 1 year old to age 44.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not the best mathematician, but I'd say somewhere between 20 and 25,000, roughly. If you can do that. I'm not like I said, that's not my primary area, but you know, I'd say about close to 20,000, somewhere in there, right? Black women are killed by homicide.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at Black men, same time period, 1999 to 2019. See, all the columns are framed the same way,
Mm-hmm.
same age groups, right? And you'll see that the deaths tend to be higher in key areas, right? Heart disease is slightly more, and that was actually only as of a couple years ago. A few years prior to that, Black women died of heart disease in greater numbers, but Black men surpassed them even in terms of heart disease. Malignant neoplasms, all of that's still there. Unintentional injury, cerebral vascular, and then bam, we run into homicide.
Right.
Right now, homicide includes everything, every form of having every form of being killed. So whether you're talking about police homicide, whether you're talking about black on black male homicide, whether you're talking about intimate partner homicide, it's all melded right there into one category. On one chart for Black women, you have about 20,000 homicides. Then you come here, you got 151,000. This is what articles obscure, especially when they start playing with rates. See, whenever you see rates, you should also want to see the raw numbers. Because when you talk about intimate partner homicide in the Black community, usually you're talking about a few hundred per year out of 43 plus million people.
Yeah.
When they tell you, oh, there's been a 60% increase in intimate partner homicides, that's out of a couple hundred people. Really, it's out of a couple hundred people, and men are slightly less than women. So you might have anywhere from 50 to 100 fewer men killed in a given year. So that might mean 250 women were killed in intimate partner homicide and 185 men out of 43 million. But how many articles have you guys seen? How many people on social media talk about Black men killing Black women in crazy numbers? You walk away with the impression that Black men are just, murdering women left and right.
In fact, feminists go as far as to say that the number one cause of death of Black women is Black men,
Exactly.
which is an outright lie.
It's an outright lie, which is why I want you guys to see these kind of charts. The number one killer of Black women is heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
So again, 25,000 people, black women killed, and that, mind you, keep in mind, that's in every way they can be killed, not just from intimate partner homicide. In every way they can be killed, 25,000. But 769,000 die to heart disease. So when somebody says the number one killer of black women, now if you want to play semantics, which demographic kills black women more than any other, well, you'd have to do that for everybody. And what you'll generally find is that every group of women, in terms of homicide, dies at the hands of their men.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, it's just like asking the question, which group of women kills black men more than any other?
Yeah.
Well, of course it's going to be black women. We all live in the same damn community. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
No, it's your the group that your own group will actually kill you more because you're actually associated with them, or you're next to them all the time.
Exactly.
So there's almost more cause for friction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why when we covered the Child Malcontent Report 2020, when I pointed out that those who are killing black children more than any other demographic are black mothers.
Black mothers. Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that they're doing it because they woke up one day and just decided to kill everybody. It's because they're primarily the one that spends the most time with the kids.
Yeah.
That's how it works. That's how it works.
How it works. Yeah.
There's no other demographic that spends as much time with the children than mothers. So mothers tend to be those who delete children more than any other demographic.
Yeah, more opportunities.
More opportunity, yeah. And truthfully, the biggest ways that they do so tends to be from neglect. You know what I mean? It's not an outward active attack. Somebody chasing a kid down a hallway with a knife. That's a severe mental break issue, and we'll cover that in the upcoming show. But for the most part, women tend to kill children to the greatest degree, and they tend to do so by neglect. So in similar fashion, if you're going to play with numbers and make statements like who kills women the most, I mean, who do you live with? It is what it is. That's why in every community, when you look at homicides, who tends to kill who the most in every community?
Yeah, each other. Somebody looks like you.
Yeah, that's what it tends to be. So that in and of itself shouldn't be surprising.
Even with white cops, they kill more white men than they do black men.
In raw numbers, yeah.
In raw numbers, yeah.
We're 13.6% of the society.
Yeah.
Now it isn't. I'm not saying rates aren't important. I'm just saying be mindful of how people play with rates for various reasons. That's the thing. Because to me, if you got a group that's killed in significant numbers and at high rates, now you have something you need to focus on. But a lot of people are playing with these numbers for a variety of reasons. So one of the things I wanted to do is just kind of clarify something in regard to this whole question. It's not because I don't think the murders of black women are unimportant or I'm trying to play that down. Not at all. But I do want to say that when you actually can present something at the expense of another demographic in the same community, I got a problem with that, especially if it has to do with black men and boys.
Yeah.
So here again, we're looking at about 25,000 homicides. And they're basically saying that during a 2-year period during the pandemic, 2,000 women got killed. Now, in this article, they don't tell you how. They don't give you the source of their data. They don't tell you how these people are killed. They just give you a number, 2,000. And that's what you should find a bit questionable. 2,077. Okay, but from where? How? What happened? No information. And then they give you individual stories. See? They give you individual stories. So you go from, let me see if I can, so you go from this here, 2077. You're seeing black women hugging, you're seeing them crying, you're seeing they're standing there looking dignified, they're giving you numbers, they're giving you data, you're seeing pain, but they're not telling you the source of their data.
Yeah.
And they're throwing numbers at you. See, second paragraph, some 2,077 black women and girls were killed in 2021.
Right.
A 51% increase over 2019. So they not 2020, 2019. Like they jumped back 2 years to make this point. Appreciate the support, Life Commerce. Thank you. They jump back to make this point. But when you talk about black men, and you start to look at the raw numbers, what you find is there's been about 25,000 women that have died from all types of homicide and 151,000 men. It is what it is, right? So that's what we're looking at. And when you find articles that want to dance around it, you should want to know what the numbers actually are.
Yeah.
In my humble opinion. All right. So we go back to this article here. Right. Homicide is pandemic's biggest killer of young black men. Remember, this is a year old,
Mm-hmm.
and it starts to give you numbers right away. Big increase in murder and manslaughter, aka homicide, in the U.S. by the accounting of CDC. Homicide rate went from 5.8 per 100,000 Americans in 2019, 7.5 in 2020. Appears to have continued to rise, albeit at a much slower rate in 2021. Who suffers when the homicide rate goes up like that? Black Americans. A little bit of flat blackness there, but right, 2020, these identifying or unidentified as Black or African American made up 13.5% of the U.S. population, according to CDC estimates that for definitional and other reasons don't quite match the results of the 2020 census. They also made up 55.6% of the homicide victims and 65.6% of the increases in homicides relative to 2019. So they're doing 2020 and 2019,
Mm-hmm.
and they're showing you some numbers, right? Some interesting charts to go with that. See if I can enlarge that a little bit. Right? Who gets killed in a murder wave? Blue line is Black. The white line is all other. These are more than these are. You know, let me give them straight. CDC numbers.
Mm-hmm.
2021 data are provisional. There's another chart of interest. This one, for some reason, came out a little blurry. I'm not sure why. It says younger black men are in the crosshairs. The blue line are younger black men ages 15 to 44. The white line is other men. And then there's a slightly grayed line that's women. And you can see the numbers here.
Wow. Okay. Not even close. Yeah.
So, but you see why they're tap dancing around the numbers a year later in the Washington Street Journal. I mean, the Wall Street Journal.
Mm-hmm.
Because really, what they don't want to have to say, and this happens in so many different areas, especially now. I'm seeing more and more feminists pushing to center women and girls to the extent that they don't mind who it costs, especially if it costs black men and boys. You know, they're trying to find ways to kick black boys and men out of the way. So they're tap dancing with the number. They're phrasing things. They're hodgepodging different contexts together to center women at all costs. And it would be interesting if this is one community doing it to another. But these are feminists that are doing this and have sons at home, have brothers, have husbands, have fathers. They're doing whatever they can to center women and girls at the expense, in my humble opinion, of boys and men. You know, but you tell me. What do you see when you see this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's just Tuesday for black men. Everybody knows about it. And I think sometimes, I mean, it's so bad people get tired of hearing about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we know that black men are at the bottom. So what? Okay, we get tired of hearing about it. Yeah. Because they're always at the bottom. They always get killed more. They always go to jail more. They're always the most homeless. They're always the worst students. Okay, so what's new? I think I think people are becoming tone deaf because it's so bad.
And I think this, and I've been saying this for years, it happens in the academy too, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Even within Africana Studies, I think we've gotten to this place where the idea is we know all there is to know about black men.
Right.
We don't need to see anything else. We don't need to hear anything else. Yes, drugs, prison, murder. We know all there is to know. Now we need to talk about everybody else. We need to talk about black girls. We need to talk about LGBT. Not because their numbers are higher in most areas. In some areas they are. You talk about gay men, you talk about HIV, you're going to see higher numbers. This, in many ways, but it ends up still coming back to black men.
Yeah.
When you get down to, to gay men or men who have sex with men, which some charge, that's the official, title they use, term.
Same gender loving, huh?
I see men who have sex with men, but the point is, when gay men's numbers are that high, they're still black men.
Yeah.
But so you kind of hear that every now and again, but they downplay particularly heterosexual black men, because the idea goes back to what you said. There's nothing new under the sun. We know all there is to know about black men. This is boring now. We need to talk about, other groups, because, and this was the point a couple of years ago, because black men hog too much of the attention with their deaths. You get too much attention. And I've been telling people for years, part of the reason is not only the numbers by which black men die, but it's also how. Especially in the last 3 or 4 years, black men are dying on camera.
Yeah, they are.
You don't hear other group, you don't see other groups dying like that. Even black women, they're not. You're really not seeing them die on camera like that. And so part of the attention black males get is not because there's some deep empathy for black men. It's because for some people, this shit is perversely entertaining.
Yeah, I see that. Strangely enough, a lot of black women are entertained by the death of black men. Strangely enough.
Well, in the larger public as well, it's
Mhm.
entertaining. When we talk about George Floyd, when we talk,
Yeah.
half the reason when I hear these feminists upset that we're talking about black men, I'm like, he died on camera.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the roughly 200 to 300 black men that die at the hands of police every year, you notice it's never the men that died off camera that get attention. It's the
Right.
ones that died on camera.
Just like the young man that died a couple of weeks ago at the hands of the police officers on camera.
It's on camera.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason we don't see black women and other demographics in the black community as much on camera is because one, they don't die as often in
Mm-hmm.
egregious ways. And because they don't die as often, you don't get as much video.
Yeah.
But that's why this shit is egregious. And before people started having, smartphone recordings of it, the reason black men got attention is because they died more. But
Right.
now it reached a fever pitch where especially when you look at Rodney King.
Mm-hmm.
Rodney King really set off a whole new framework for black male death.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he died, but you understand my point. In
Yeah.
terms of violence,
Yeah.
it was
And
visible.
I mean, it was visible because it was a fluke that somebody just happened to be up at midnight with a camera.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that was a time period where you had to have intention to have a camera.
You did. They were not cheap, especially a video camera.
Oh, they were. You weren't
Yeah.
just pulling your phone out to record something. You had to have a
No.
reason to have that bad boy out
And ready.
and like taking your whole shoulder, holding that camera up. Well, if you caught a recording with that, they knew it was important because that was
Yeah.
common.
Yeah, I'm sure that man is wealthy beyond means now, just from that one recording.
That one recording, right?
Like this Bruder film almost.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. But I think it introduced a whole nother level of violence porn to the American consciousness because
Right.
it wasn't reproduced in a film, it wasn't fabricated, it wasn't made up. You got to see wanton violence. The same
Mhm.
violence black folk have been saying, particularly black men, have been going on for generations. Now you
Mhm.
got to see it. It's almost you caught a lynching
Mhm.
and he just happened to not die.
Mhm.
But how many recordings now we even when my students we talk about lynchings, you see pictures
Yeah.
of black men that are hung up. But when's the last time you saw a videotape of somebody recording it while it was happening?
And like I said, the brother just died a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, he's one of the few. You know, one of the few, and that's because they have to wear cams now.
Right. And I'm referring to eras where there needed to be some intentionality behind
Oh,
cameras. I mean, hell, we've had films out since the beginning of the 20th century. I mean,
yeah.
but that doesn't mean that these things were easy to catch.
No, it's like spotting a UFO.
Exactly. Exactly. So part of the reason that black men get the attention they do when it comes to homicide has to do with how they die
And how often?
and how
Because
often.
how
Absolutely.
often? I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's the odds are in the favor of actually catching something like that because it happens all the time.
And I don't really see black men going out their way arguing for more articles on black male death. Um, I make that argument because I want to make sure black men don't become completely invisible, but most black men don't. But somehow the tone
Hmm.
of a lot of these feminist articles and critiques and essays and books even is an attack on black men
Yeah.
for getting as much attention as they do for their
Hmm.
own deaths.
Yeah.
And I think that by the time you get to BLM, this gets to a puzzling, pretzel-like, confusing framework
Hmm.
because the same women that are complaining that black men get too much attention are
Hmm.
using black male attention
Hmm.
for resources and attention. And
Hmm.
they would often bait and switch whatever interview they did, starting off on the death of a black man and replacing it
Hmm.
with whomever they wanted to focus on, which was usually a black woman.
Yeah.
And black men didn't say much because at the end of the day, if you said something, you were misogynist.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't say anything. They would routinely ambulance chase the deaths of
Mm-hmm.
black men, bait and switch the conversation. And if they didn't have another woman who died recently to bait and switch the conversation to, they would
Mm-hmm.
focus on the victim's mother. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen this shit happen too. They would talk more about how she felt losing her son
Mm-hmm.
than the loss of the man himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right?
almost like Hillary Clinton saying that the biggest losers in war are actually women because they lose their sons and their husbands.
Exactly. Exactly.
Damn the man that died.
Yeah, yeah. Just like I don't know if it was her or somebody else in the newspaper clipping put something like how dire homelessness was for women because 1 out of 4 homeless people were women. And I remember the first time I saw that shit, I was like, wait a minute, it means 3 out of 4 are men. Why is this how exactly is the 1 out of 4 the takeaway? Which is often what happens when I read articles about black women and girls. I want to support. It's just two things. One, you don't have to make these pieces in contention with black men, especially if that ire is directed at black men who've died. That doesn't make any damn sense. How do you attack dead black men because you feel like you don't get enough attention? That's not you miss the point, right? And then two, you alienate men who want to support, but at the same time feel a certain way, like you kicking me in the nuts right now, but I don't know how to say it other than something doesn't feel right. So black men
And,
just kind of get quiet.
yeah, it's like the pretty girl argument. Pretty girls get the attention, right? So so that's what they're using. They said, how come I don't get the same attention as black men? Because you don't die as often. That's
Don't die.
obvious. But the thing is, I still want attention though.
I mean, I think I used the title that Tommy mentioned in an interview he did with Yvette Carnell some years ago. He
Mm-hmm.
said when something like the need for attention outweighs death.
Yeah, yeah. For women, it does.
And I remember when I was listening to that interview, I literally got up and walked out the room when he said, "I said, God damn it, God damn it, the need for attention outweighs
Outweighs
death."
death. Yep.
Shit. Shout out to Dark Disciple for the support, Brandon Eljet, appreciate that. But yeah, that's kind of what we see because I think at the end of the day, you can advocate for women and girls, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be at the expense of men and boys.
Yeah.
You can you can advocate for women, and it doesn't have to be an attack on black men to do so. But the other part, aside from the tone of these articles being an attack of black men, you also don't have to play with the numbers. You don't have to lie. You don't have to do that. If you want to say that, black women are suffering, especially compared to other groups of women, then it is what it is. But when you do so in a manner where you're tiptoeing around, because really what you're tiptoeing around is not wanting to admit that black men die more,
Mm-hmm.
or black men have higher homelessness rates, or black men have higher unemployment rates, or black men have higher rates of being excluded from the economy. Whenever you want to tap dance around these things, and I saw this over and over again during the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic when they were trying to feature black women. They were saying, okay, black women are having difficulty finding housing, and then it got to the point where black women were the most evicted. Nobody wanted to pay attention to the fact that there were so many homeless black men in the first goddamn place. There was no way they could be evicted as much because they didn't have it. But the whole pandemic, you saw them ignore black male homelessness.
And the biggest people that group there was actually dying were black men that were homeless.
See what I
But
mean?
they ignored that.
And so I get people that get mad at me. Well, all you want to talk about is vulnerability. All you want to talk about is victimization. I know that doesn't make you feel good. I get that it doesn't make your dick hard. I'm
Yeah.
not doing this to feel good. I'm not doing this to enjoy. What is somebody somehow I enjoy. I get a Jones off of victimization. No, I point it out because the shit is real. And I can count on one hand how many articles there have been written about it, and somehow even black men will fall into this lull that nothing's happening. And I'm saying, no, I'm pointing this stuff out because it's a rarity to see it in an article. It's a rarity to find the data. It's a rarity to have that data presented on an international stage and for all to see.
Yeah.
No qualifications, no tap dancing around terms, no finding new creative ways to word something so you can downplay what's going on with black men. I put it on the front burner because there are too few places that do it, and there are too many places happy to obscure the numbers.
Yeah.
We turn around and say, well, the numbers don't make me feel good, so you need to stop talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
You only need to say things that get my dick hard. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you did it, you'd have an article every day about black men and what's wrong with black men and boys and what's wrong with them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying, no, I'm the father of a son. There's no way in the world that I'm going to tap dance behind this, beyond this stuff and pretend like it's not happening. And then to me, the best way, if you're going to strategize a response, which I hope we do, I'm trying to be instrumental in that. That's why we have the black male political agenda that black men themselves write, because I want us to be instrumental in framing a response, a strategic one. But at the end of the day, if you're going to have a strategic response, you have to first be clear what you're responding to.
Mm-hmm.
How's that work? How exactly do you change the quality of life for black men and boys in a demonstrative way, but you're going to ignore the quality of life of black men and boys in a demonstrative way? I don't get how that works.
It can't. It can't.
Yeah.
But the thing is they have to bring us back to the middle.
It doesn't. It's like I'm asking you, how are you going to get a cast on your broken leg if you're going to sit here and act like your leg isn't broken? See, I can still stand up, sort of. I don't. I'm fine. No, you're not fine.
I'm John Henry. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a John Henry effect, and we think we can build a strategy based on a John Henry performance.
Yeah,
we're going to pump our chest out, and we're going to outdo the steam engine. But the problem is, the end of that fucking story, John Henry dies.
John Henry dies. Yep. Yeah.
And if you look at life expectancy rates, guess what we're doing more than any other group?
It's going down faster. Yeah,
faster. So at some point, we got to be able to actually craft a response to the real issues that black boys and men face that isn't rooted in John Henryism. It isn't rooted in fantastical thinking that somehow we're just going to change all of this if we puff our chests out and act like it's not going on. Doesn't work like that. We're still, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And women get angry with us because of our plight in the state that we're in. They get mad because they can't claim victim.
That's the problem.
That they can't claim it.
So it's an interesting dynamic.
We were just watching that short with Ishmael Reed in 1984, right? When she was complaining about Boston, right? Like was it 12 women got killed in 12 months in Boston, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Ishmael Reed, and he was trying to tell you, I read Jet every week. And guess what they're saying? The biggest killer of black men was black women, by far.
She got quiet.
Shout
out to Gigi. Go to the Green Gorilla channel, and if you're not, check out his videos. But we're talking about one of the shorts that he posted up. That pointed out that debate. But he also posted the whole show, which is brilliant. I think he did that last year, a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to see it, I can look forward. You can ask Gigi himself, but it's a powerful show, an early discussion, debate between what I would call a kind of a proto black male studies scholar and a black feminist back in the 80s.
Back in the 80s, right? So like I said,
this
stuff is not new.
Okay. Yeah. And Indigo laid it out, Tony Brown's Journal. Absolutely. Go look for that particular episode of Tony Brown's Journal on the Green Gorillas channel.
Yep.
What's up, Marcus? I see you in there. But yeah, man. So, it just gets to me, because but what I was going to say a moment ago, you have black feminists on one side that are upset, dominance feminists, shout out to Gigi, right? On one side that are angry that they can't claim the numbers that black men claim. This is why flat blackness is a useful strategy for them, because they'll flatten blackness to dazzle people with the numbers, to bring them in, and then bait and switch the conversation about women and girls, because fundamentally they're upset that they can't claim the numbers. And black men, now you have some black men on the other side of the spectrum that are angry if black men bring the real numbers up too, because it makes us feel bad.
Yeah, because they don't want to feel like victims.
They don't want to feel like victims. And I'm like, I don't care about how you feel. This is not a feelings issue for me. I don't give a
you are a victim.
It's the data lays that out. That's why one
Mhm.
brother, he was talking about me on his channel, and I
Mhm.
and I went into it. I forget what he did. You know that they at you, they
Yeah.
can at you in the title. I went
Mhm.
to his channel and he was talking shit about me, and I said, okay, well, I said, look, man, all right. I said, give me a database approach to talking about black men that is more updated, because you say I need to update. So give me a an empirically based approach to
Mhm.
talking about black men in a manner that's credible and true. That's an alternative to how I do it. Let me see it. And he
Mhm.
went right back, right into ad hominem attacks. And I gave him one more chance. I said, okay, you jumped into ad hominem, you didn't answer the question. Give you one more chance. Give
Mhm.
me an approach that you think is better than what I'm doing, that is empirically based,
Mhm.
and can talk about black men accurately. Couldn't give me a straight answer. So I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, because the problem isn't just this whole, kind of accusation of victimization. The problem is the data
Yeah.
does actually point out the fact
Yeah.
that you're vulnerable.
You're vulnerable. You're dying of cancer, but they want to give you vitamins. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I remember a conversation when I first started talking to Tommy. My son was in elementary school, and he was going to this little track race where they asked all the track runners, which in elementary school is like everybody.
Mhm.
Yeah, you didn't have a team. It was just all the kids running in full clothing in the middle of the goddamn day, right?
I remember that day. Remember those days? Yeah.
Yeah, and they had all of them wear like a pink ribbon to
Mhm.
talk about cancer, breast cancer. I think that was the focus, breast cancer.
Mhm.
I
Breast cancer.
remember I
Yeah.
mentioned it to Tommy, and I said, "Man, this is what about this?" He said, "You do know that when you look at the prostate numbers for black men,
Mhm.
doctors can't even explain and haven't been able to for years why black men's prostate numbers are higher, than most other demographics." I said, "Wow, I didn't know that."
Mhm.
But I'm still thinking in my head that there can't be any way this would, even reach the numbers of breast cancer, because I'm seeing pink ribbons on my son's arm, so it
Yeah.
can't be. And he said, "No, no, prostate cancer exceeds the numbers of," and it dropped me out of my damn chair,
Mhm.
because I had never once heard anybody say it. I heard people say prostate cancer was bad. I heard people kind of intimate that black men suffer from it. It never crossed my imagination that
Mhm.
the numbers would exceed black women dealing with breast cancer, because I had not seen the pink ribbons. I hadn't seen anybody put a blue ribbon on any elementary school kid running in a track race to raise funds for prostate cancer. Never seen it. And I started to realize more and more that there were so many areas where black men are vulnerable, that sticking our head in the sand and saying, or putting you see when my kids used to do that, put their fingers in the air, la 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 la. I don't want to say it. I don't want it. It makes no goddamn sense, because I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I'm not saying this to make you feel good. I'm saying
Mhm.
it because it's empirically measurable, and
Yeah.
it's being downplayed
Mhm.
in so many different circles. I've told this story before. I remember attending a conference. It was a men's conference, American Men's Studies Association conference. I remember attending it, and I saw a young black man, who was giving a presentation about the high levels of HIV transmissions that women were suffering from, black women. That was
Mhm.
his report. And I
Right.
remember he gave a presentation the day before where he, was talking about himself as a gay man and so on and so forth. So
Mhm.
I walked up to him, and was at a point where nobody, because they have these hallways where people, have these little posters, and they do these kind of mini presentations for everyone that walks by. So, you know,
Okay.
if you walk up to them, they'll give you a 5-minute presentation, you leave, and someone else walks up, they give the same five, it's just a
Yeah.
little hallway presentation. And so when he was done with a group in front of me, I walked up to him, and he gave me his spiel, and it was detailed. He had charts up that he showed me on black women and the HIV rates, and I was like, wow. And I said, "Now you presented yesterday." I said, "You a gay brother, right?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Let me show you something." So I pulled up my laptop
Mhm.
on my tablet, and I showed him the charts on gay men
Wow. Okay.
and HIV. He started crying.
Really? He didn't know?
That's the problem. He
Mm.
didn't know. He was
Wow.
working on a master's degree, and he was doing this master's degree somewhere in Florida on in Black studies, and all his advisors were black feminists, black women
Um.
feminists.
Mhm. Okay.
And so when he said, I want to go to the American Men's Studies Association and give a presentation, they required him to do a presentation on Black women and HIV, but they never told him that the numbers for gay men were astronomical. I think at the time, the projected rates of transmission were like 1 out of 2.
Yeah.
Black gay men,
Yeah.
1 out of 2, 50%. You know, and that was unheard of, and it dwarfed any number that he was going to give you about Black women. But the fact that he himself, as an out gay man in
Right.
Black studies with all Black feminist advisors,
Right.
nobody told him. He didn't think to look because he was taught by these people he respected. This is what he was telling me. He said, well, these are almost like mother figures to me.
Right. Right.
So when I said I wanted to do my study on HIV, they started giving me all this data on how, you know, bad it is for Black women.
Right.
And so he was running around attacking people for not advocating enough for Black women, but nobody told him the rates for Black gay men. I
Yeah.
showed him one chart. He started crying. He said,
Wow.
I didn't know.
Wow.
My question was either you don't know or you are purposely not talking about your own demographic. And I just want to know why. I'm just curious. Like, what would lead you to, you know, what do they call that in writing? Bury the lead.
Right.
I just want to
Yeah.
know why you were burying the lead. He didn't know. Nobody told him. Which was a similar experience I had coming out of grad school when it came to talking about these numbers with Black men. Nobody told me.
Mm.
All of the conversation was about the victimization and vulnerability of women.
Right. Yeah.
So I
So
talk about it in regard to Black men, and it's one of the reasons Black male studies fixates on it, because whether you're in the academy or you're outside of the academy, the real numbers on the Black male experience aren't
yeah.
considered relevant.
Yeah.
They're flashy when someone dies on camera. You might hear a blurb here and there, but usually people use those moments to foreground whatever their own political issue is, and Black men just become the political football for a moment.
They use increases in percentages to actually hide the fact.
Exactly. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, everybody's talking about this brother Tyree, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it is people using whatever their own agenda is to talk about him.
Right.
They're using him to gain attention so they can bait and switch the conversation to the particular issues that they have and they want to express. And he becomes a stage by which they can get international attention.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like selling a car with a pretty girl, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Except instead of a pretty girl strewn on the hood of a car, it's a
Right.
dead Black man.
It's a dead Black man,
It's
which
enough to
probably
get
which
attention.
probably sells equally as well.
You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're dealing with. And so I'm interested in actually dealing with the reality, because to me, again, if you're going to strategize a response, you got to start from reality. Where are we actually at?
Mm-hmm.
Where would we like to go? And based on what we now know, we've been experiencing and how it works, how can we get to where we want to go? That's the question I want to ask. That's the conversation I want to have. That's why I do this show. That's why BGS, you know, convinced me to come to YouTube. He was like, you know,
Yes.
what you're doing, because at the
Mm-hmm.
time I was writing academic papers and I was writing short blogs on an independent blog that I still have. That, you know, for me it was like if I got 300 or 400 people that read a blog essay, I was like, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Because let me tell you a secret: if you're an academic, unless you're Cornell West, you're somebody widely known, you write an essay, you get
Mm-hmm.
it published in a journal.
Mm-hmm.
You're lucky if 10 people read it.
Wow.
You're lucky if someone says somebody responded to your journal article that you wrote 3 years ago and they put a couple sentences in response to you in this journal over here 3
Mm-hmm.
years later, and it's some obscure kind of but that's, you get used to that.
Mm-hmm.
When I write a blog piece and 300 people read it, I was like, cool, 300 people read. I put some data out there. Hopefully it'll be useful. BGS read one of my blogs, and I think, do you remember how many people watched?
Ooh, I think the total, I think the first total was like 7,500.
Yeah. So the same piece that I wrote that got 300 people to read it, BGS, all he did was read it on his show.
Yeah.
And he did it to prove a point to me that I was not really receptive to when he just said it. But when I saw the numbers, I was like, God damn.
Mm-hmm.
He said, Doc, people don't read.
No.
You got to talk to them in the medium that they operate in.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Mr. Me Too. Says for the BGS Scout tax. That's what's up.
Appreciate you. My PhDs, but I always say they don't belong to me. They're everybody's PhDs.
Man. But my point though is one of the ways you convinced me to come to the space is because you really can put something out into the world and really not just be heard, but actually have interaction.
Mm-hmm.
There was no
Yeah.
way whatsoever I could write the black male political agenda in the way it's been written without interaction because I didn't write it. I asked you all to write it, and brothers contributed, and the thing is extensive, and there was ideas in there I would have come up with on my own. And it's far more effective to me than one cat sitting at his desk writing. I think there are benefits to both, but in this medium, when it comes to coming up with solutions for black men, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's far more effective to have black men have a dialogue with each other, not any other demographic telling us what we can talk about, telling us what's too extreme, telling us how we should be doing it. For black men themselves to come up with solutions to their own problems. But that first and foremost means that we got to at least be able to identify what problems we have.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do that when you start with fantastical shit.
Yeah. It's basically sometimes what the old thing about propaganda, which is the big lie,
Mm, yeah,
which is the big lie. Thank you, Passport OG, for paying taxes. Thank you, Spain Man.
yeah.
BGS Tax, another epic show, Doc. Yeah, I agree. And this is something like Doc talks about this all the time, right? And by the bait and switch that black feminists do, well, all feminists do, you know,
Mm,
because the white feminists will use the black feminists to actually with their numbers to actually talk about women, which is flat female, and they
mhm,
get mad about it.
mhm.
The thing is, they get mad at Doc because they don't want black males centered.
No, not at all. And they also know if black men really catch wind of just how this thing has been going, just to the extent
Hmm.
to which
Hmm.
the black male experience has been used
Hmm.
in the manner it's being used, all hell will break
What
loose.
what did Tone say? They're gonna raise up on everybody.
They're gonna raise up on everybody,
Hmm.
and they can't have that. I mean, really, when you look at Passport Bros, this is one way that black men are raising up on everybody. And
Hmm.
notice how many people are responding.
Hmm.
There's been no violence, ain't no cussing out. Really, what even though I hear people gaslighting and you're saying, well, you guys are rubbing it in people's faces. No, what happened is black men were talking to each other,
Hmm.
and other people came into the discussion and tried to shame,
Yeah.
insult, guilt, and had a need to be right
Hmm.
and started fights about it. But black men were not running out around every other demographic telling them how much they love traveling. That's not what happened.
They did, what did they use? A tar baby, right? They use black women's own words and their
Yeah,
own vitriol and just use it against them.
yeah.
The black men blew this whole topic up and spread it far and wide. And the more they complained, the more other black women came in and complained. The brothers, all they did was say, see how they are? But I have to tell you, this is why we're leaving.
And, but at the end of the day, just the
Hmm.
fact that whatever percentage of men decided, what's the trip? They're not even upset about the actual number of men in other countries. They're upset at how many black men are talking about it.
Right.
You got brothers that can't even afford passports that are having a conversation about it, and they're more upset about that
Hmm.
than they are the actual numbers. Shout out to Jay Shabazz, is paying the taxes as well. Thanks for the information and y'all time, no doubt. Just the fact that black men are having a conversation that has not been vetted, not been
Hmm.
approved
Right.
of,
Right.
been authorized by those who deem themselves our betters to
Hmm.
make decisions for what constitutes proper black male thought. That alone
Hmm.
is enough to incite frustration. So, what happens if you took the same power that black men are applying to something like Passport Bros and applied it to something else? Applied it
Yes.
to something that was relevant to the improvement of the quality of their life. Uh, and it could be anything. It doesn't even have to be big.
Yeah.
The
I
fact
mean,
that black men would make the decision to do it would be enough to piss people off. And here's the thing: not just
mhm.
piss people off, scare the shit out of people.
Well, you know what scared the shit out of the Democrats, right? With the Ice Cube effect. That was
Yeah.
just two elections. That was just two elections.
Yes.
There
Absolutely.
was two elections. Got a whole lot of people fired behind that.
Yeah.
Just two elections.
Yeah.
Just because we dared, didn't even actually go against them. We just raised the question. What about us?
Hmm.
That's all we asked. Okay, what do we get?
Yeah.
That's all we asked. We didn't say they were bad. We didn't say they were bad politicians, that they hated black men. All we asked was, okay, you haven't mentioned us. You haven't given us a reason to vote for you. That's all
Yeah.
we asked. That's all we said.
And they gaslit the issue by making it about black men voting for Trump.
Right.
But the numbers they really need to pay attention to are the black men that abstained from voting.
Yes.
Those are the numbers you really want to keep your eye on. Black men
Hmm.
that decided to withdraw, to intentionally
Hmm.
withdraw their
Hmm.
participation until their needs are addressed.
Yeah. And all we got was a video called "No Voting, No Plucking."
You see what I mean?
With a trans man, or
Exactly.
was it trans woman, or what? I don't
I
know
don't,
exactly what that was.
it was every way letting heterosexual black men know that they weren't relevant and they weren't
Yes.
a concern even within the black community. And black men responded accordingly by either raising questions, some
Hmm.
of whom did raise Trump, and some of whom abstained altogether.
Hmm.
Those three actions right there scared the shit out of a whole, demographic, out of a whole
Yeah.
series of them,
Yeah.
actually. Shout
Yeah.
out to Lord Lovesmith, says Doc. Keep up the good work and stay encouraged. Black men like myself need your voice and insight into issues that are impacting our daily lives, man.
Yeah.
Shout out to you. You know, but yeah, it scared America, and it scared the black community, scared America because black men decided to actually have a conversation and question where they
Hmm.
put their resources. In this context, voting. And it ain't like there's a whole lot of us, but we raised questions because that meant that you could no longer easily use black men's image to advance your agenda if black men themselves were willing to check you in public.
Hmm.
That's really what a lot of the fear was about, especially when you talk about white liberals in the Democratic Party. They were concerned. If black men are starting to talk like this, and if they start to withdraw the
Yeah.
use of their image, now what?
Yeah. Yeah. And then because we have influence, we cause other men that are disenchanted to also follow, do the same thing, because now passport bros that started out as a black movement are being joined by other races of men because they're dissatisfied.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is happening internationally. I mean, even
Hmm.
as small as my channel is, I got brothers reaching out to me from South Africa to Asia,
Mm.
from Australia to Canada. I mean, if a brother with a small channel can do that, then what impact might black men have? I mean, we already see it with Passport Bros. How many other groups are asking to participate publicly?
Yes.
I'm seeing more and more of that. White boys want to be down with Passport Bro.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that. I've seen several videos about white boys and Asian men wanting to be down with passport bros.
And they don't need to because they've already been traveling, but they are actively asking
Hmm.
to participate, which I find incredibly interesting.
They're trying to send a message because they're saying, because they're saying that things at home are messed up,
Yeah.
and they're trying, which is one of the reasons that passport bros are talking about it. It's not just to go overseas and find their significant other. The thing is, they're saying is raise the question: why do we have to go overseas to get something we should get at home?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't, personally, I don't mind if other groups come into the discourse. I don't mind as long as we don't allow the discussion to be watered down so much that it
Hmm.
no longer has anything to do with black men.
Right.
Because I got to admit, even when I saw this happen with feminists, I was like, damn. When I saw white women take over intersectionality
Hmm.
and, and Me Too, they took
Mm.
both of them.
Yeah.
They took both of them. You ask the average person where Me Too started, they are not thinking about a black woman. They are and they cannot tell you who Kimberly Crenshaw is. They can't.
No.
They're talking about intersectionality in a manner that is void of black women.
Hmm.
I don't want to see any black male movement or idea be appropriated by other groups to the point where even black men have watered down a concept that came from them
Hmm.
that means nothing now. I don't want to see that happen, which is why I keep going back to the data
Hmm.
because I find it to be an excellent barometer for keeping us honest. If I go by the data, it means that I can't push what I feel like on a Tuesday just because I feel like it. No, I
Yeah.
have to, there's something I have to align myself with. Otherwise, I can be checked by it. But
Yeah.
if you don't have a standard, whatever,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
just come out and talk a bunch of shit.
What did Feynman say? Is it no matter how elegant the math is, no how elegant the theory is, if it doesn't match the experiment
Mhm.
from the data from the experiment, it's wrong.
It's wrong.
It's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the day, that's another reason that I insist on an empirically based argument, because otherwise, if we're just going by feelings,
Mm-hmm.
we sound a lot like some of the other groups that we pointed out that operate by feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whatever feels good in the moment is what makes the news.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like this article with on the Wall Street Journal, even though technically it was accurate the way it was worded,
Hmm.
but from the spirit of the data, it was wrong.
Yeah, they cherry picked it, but to me, it's like, look, okay, I can even live with the cherry picking
Mm-hmm.
if you're not going to put down your sons, your brothers, you know what I mean, your
Mm-hmm.
fathers. Look, if you want to have an article about the vulnerability of black women, then do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
But to have one half of a sentence,
Mm-hmm.
3/4 into the article, that actually points out that black men are at the bottom of even a subject that we weren't even looking for.
Right.
I haven't heard anybody talking about clearing cases with 3-letter government organizations or police departments. I've not heard anybody talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Very first time I hear somebody talk about it, they're talking about black women and girls, which is fine. But then I got to find out 3/4 into the article that black males even have the worst when it comes to clearing cases, but at the same time, the highest rates of homicide. Make that make sense. How in the hell do you have the highest rates of homicide, the lowest clearance rates, but the article that mentions it ain't even about you?
Yeah. You can't make this stuff
They're
up.
slighting you to make this point.
All right. Go ahead, Hassan.
I don't
Pick up the
understand.
sword.
This
Pick up
shit
the
is
sword, Hassan.
ridiculous.
Don't let it go.
And then the first people to attack you if you point it out are other black
Mm-hmm.
men, because they say it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel good to hear this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Hassan Chop.
feel
Come
I don't
bring it
feel
home.
I don't feel manly.
It's misogynist to attack black women because you're trying to center black men. Yeah.
And if you leave it to these pockets of feminists and black men
Mm-hmm.
who are saying the same shit for different reasons,
Mm-hmm.
both groups would be happier if black men sat down and shut the fuck up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In other words, just go ahead and die, but do it quietly.
Do it quietly.
Mm-hmm. Same thing with passport bros. Just leave, but do it quietly.
Yeah. So black women can act like they can function in a world that doesn't have black men, as if that's going to go very far. And black men can act like we're all going to become millionaires off of Bitcoin or some shit. Whatever the hell it is, I'm just like, what? All we need to do is we just do business. Okay. Or really, you can't get a $5,000 loan to fix your car, but we just need to do business. Okay. All right.
it took a billionaire to actually bring it home. He said the biggest problem with black male business. What up, these Dusty Nuts? I
Shout
like
out to
that
Dustin.
name though.
Who makes you say that shit too? You can't even get around it. Yes, see, I heard you try to. So what's the D? You gotta say it. You gotta say it. If I ever have to quote him in a book, that's what's going to be funny.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Citation Dusty Nut.
It would yeah, yeah. Quotation number 68, right?
You know what I'm saying?
From Dusty Nuts.
Dusty Nut. He makes you say that shit though. I ain't mad at him. Shout out to the brother. Appreciate that. Nah, man, Marcus, I don't know if it's unfiltered. I just look at this and I'm like, man, the thing about it is, what I'm saying to you all right now is what
Mhm.
Tommy is saying to the academy.
Right.
In turn, now I'm in black male studies too. He's not saying it alone, but I'm saying there's an analogy there, because we're
Mhm.
saying the same thing to different audiences. We're saying, look, you can't keep using black men as step stools when it's convenient and then sweeping them under the rug when it's not.
Mhm.
And like this shit makes any sense. You can't keep doing it, because the numbers for black men in too many different contexts makes no goddamn sense. That is why, instead of me telling you what the numbers are, I show them to you.
Yeah.
Look at this. Look at this.
The funny thing is, Doc, when I noticed that, and this is something that I noticed, right? Black women don't start dying of heart disease, right, until they're in their 60s, right? Black women start dying of heart disease in their 30s.
And let's
Look at
look at
that.
it.
Look at
Yes,
that. Right.
this
Heart
is a good
disease.
point.
Where is it? 65 plus, right?
it doesn't become the number one cause of death until over 65. It's the second cause from 35 to 64,
Mm-hmm.
or actually 25 to 64. It's the second cause, but it doesn't become the number one till over 65.
Mm-hmm.
We go to black men,
Look at that.
35 to 60.
35. Yeah.
But I'm sorry, we shouldn't talk about heart disease because it makes people feel weak. It doesn't. We shouldn't talk about this. That's just victimization. If it's victimization, but your ass is on the slab, what are you talking about? They are getting black men in black bags and taking them out of their apartments. What the hell are you talking about? I don't want to talk about that. Okay, well, all right. But this is what I'm looking at. Look at that. From at age 35, you got 39,000. 35 to 44, 39,590 black men dying. By the time you get to age 65, 444,149.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. They start
Yeah.
dying at 35.
Yeah. It's number
What
one.
other demographic dies at 35 to heart disease? Well, we're not going to talk about it.
We are not talking about it. Yeah.
Fuck out of here with this bullshit.
Yeah,
Look,
we run around with pink ribbons, okay?
look, man, I want to
Over breast cancer. Really?
I want you see what I mean. This I want to show you this. So, age 35 to 44. This is black women. You got 12,219 black women that are dying due to HIV.
Mm-hmm.
I am sad to hear that. So that is the fourth leading cause of death at age 35 to 44.
Mm-hmm.
Drops down to the sixth leading cause of death at age 45 to 54. Right? The problem is that when you look at black men at 45 to 54, 24,000 dying at HIV. 35 to 44, 21,000 dying to HIV. It is in the top 10 causes of death for black men. 73,818 dying from HIV. It is in the top 10 causes of death. But guess what? It's 4 steps behind homicide.
Wow.
But you got to look for an article on black men and homicide during the pandemic from a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen a PowerPoint yet that's designed to promote empathy for black men. And if there's no social empathy, as much as we want to say empathy is emotionality, the reality is that empathy translates into policy.
Mm-hmm.
It translates into resources. It translates into program. It translates into grants being offered for those willing to set up and establish the means to apply those resources to people on the ground. But if there's no empathy, there's no frame of reference to direct resources in those directions, let alone approve policy.
The old squeaky wheel theory, right?
The squeaky wheel theory. We have to, and that's one of the reasons that, myself, Gigi, Dr. Neil, we're actually articulating some of this because we're trying to change the ground level discussion, which works itself up. Look, if you were reading about intersectionality in 1989, you might have thought the idea was neat.
Right.
When it translated into something you heard on television and talk shows and in every professional development training in the goddamn world.
Right.
By the time you get to 2020, hell, you can go to 2015 and BLM if you want to, but I'm saying from 1989 to now, intersectionality has become a global concept. This is how it works. The ideas start at the ground level, like seeds in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then they develop from there if there's a will to do so. Right now, many of us, or at least in the last decade, as far as black men are concerned, we're trying to grow the ideas at the ground level to change the foundation to produce a different outcome. Not one that necessarily happens tomorrow. I don't know when it can happen, but I have to start at the ground level first. We have to change. We have to change the terminology. We have to create the vocabulary. We got to spread the word about this. This is a process. I can't make it go faster just because I want to.
Yeah.
Can't alpha my way into government and make them pass all of the black male political agenda items into law simply because I got, my chest is puffed out. Can't do it. This is the process. All the things we talk about that other demographics are enjoying right now came from decades earlier. And we never talked about ourselves as a separate or distinct demographic that had its own needs. Black men didn't do that. We talked about ourselves in the context of community, which on a fundamental level, I don't have a problem with. But when every other demographic goes for itself and uses our numbers to do it, but we don't even use our numbers to advocate for ourselves, you know what you get?
What?
You get high levels of death, like you're seeing on this chart, and nobody advocating for you.
Mm,
That's what you get. And other black men ridiculing you if you try to advocate for black men.
mm. Yeah.
So if you have a better approach, I'm all ears. But again, you got to start with the empirical. You can't come to me with some feel good shit. You definitely can't come to me with insults. You got to come to me with data.
Mm,
How do you
yeah.
change the floor of this, the foundation of it, let alone the top floors? How do you change all of that with material resources based on what we know is actually measurably happening? How do you do that?
Yeah.
That's the question I ask. Want to have that conversation? Let's have it.
You
You
got to
want
change. You
or
got to
get
change.
views? You're not gonna get my attention. Go ahead.
Got to change policy. You got to change the environment. That's the only way to actually do things. I remember, I think it was Marty McFly talked about we need 100,000 black male programmers. I said,
Mhm.
the only way to do that is actually get resources from the government. It's the only way it can be done. And, no, we can do it ourselves. Nobody can do it on that level. Nobody can actually do it themselves on that scale.
Mm.
Got to have help. You got to get resources. It's always we don't have to alpha our way through it. Just focus, and each individual man actually uh, puts his nose to the grindstone and do that. You can't get those numbers without help.
Hey, look, I don't even have a problem. Look, if you want to do it philanthropically,
Hmm.
hey, okay, let's do it philanthropically. But at the end of the day, what are we doing and why?
Hmm.
To me, that needs to be framed. That needs to be articulated.
Yeah, and even then, you have to change the the structure. You have to change the environment. You have to change the policy
Yeah.
for people to even get by. Even something it's small, but it's big or small, is what is it, the thing about boys, Barack Obama,
Oh,
um,
oh,
my brother's keeper.
my brother's keeper. Yeah.
That was a government policy that changed that actually put that together. That's what you need.
Even though it wasn't federally based, it's
Yeah.
where even though it should have been, but at the end of the day, it has to start somewhere. And here's the thing: one of the things I like about what I am seeing online, even though it's kind of all over the place,
Hmm.
you kind of you framed it as herding cats at one point, but it still can
you've been
have an
you've been
effect.
you've been scratched a few times, so you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
but it still is having an effect. If you have a group of black men threatening to go elsewhere for something as simple as
Hmm.
relationships, well, sex, relationships, and marriages, right?
Hmm.
You have a collection of black men stating that. Look how much attention is
Hmm.
happening just over that. What
Yeah.
happens if you actually wanted to establish something more substantive?
Mm.
I'm just curious. What
Hmm.
if we decided to focus any degree of our attention toward the things that really would change our quality of life? What could happen?
Yeah. Yeah. If
Again,
we can only can get black women to actually complain about
shit.
it.
Look, but that doesn't change until you first identify what actually needs to be addressed. And
Yeah.
here's the thing: there's not universal agreement among black men about what those things are.
Yeah.
There isn't. But that's a discussion that needs to happen because again, we come out of a legacy of thinking communally.
Hmm.
And feminism spawned a legacy of women thinking individually, not individually on an individual level, but individually as a demographic,
Hmm.
right? They pondered, and this is another short that Gigi put up from, what's the brother's name? Bobby Wright, Dr. Bobby
Right.
Wright.
Yeah.
He talked about, feminists began to frame their relationships to the world in more alignment with white women than black men
Mm. Yeah.
under the guise of some kind of universal sisterhood. And he
Hmm.
put it so brilliantly. He said, were they actually convinced black women that they would prioritize womanhood over their husbands and their sons?
Hmm.
That was brilliantly put. Because then white women weren't doing none of that shit and convinced a whole demographic of black women that they would
Mm.
for an idea about universal sisterhood that they use when needed, but they still get married
Mm.
and they still have
Yeah.
resources, familial resources to hand down. They
And they said,
literally, they literally doubled their family income when they entered
yes.
the workforce in the 1970s.
Yep, they did, and taking jobs and resources and loans and all kinds of stuff from black men.
Yeah. So when we talk about the dollar that white men make and the 75 cents white women make, that's $1.75 in their household.
Wow.
Whereas
Yeah.
we're over here trying to figure out how to live
A
on
dollar. Oh, less than a dollar. 80 cents. Yeah.
60 something cents for black women.
Mm.
And if you, and now it's more, I think it's like 69 cents if you're a black male that's employed,
Yeah.
but if you're unemployed, it's the low 50s.
Yeah.
But the point is, we're figuring out how to live with those numbers by ourselves.
Mm.
Those white women that are complaining about the 75 cents, they'll use other women
Mm-hmm.
to complain and hold the bullhorn, but they go home to their husbands and have that $1.75 to pass on to their children and their
Mm.
grandchildren.
Mm.
I mean, this is ridiculous. But that's where we are.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway, man, uh, I just had to I had to talk about it because I'm looking at this article and I'm like, this is the kind of this is the kind of shaming that goes on where it seems like an innocent article that's just pointing out where that black women are dying and nobody is paying attention to it, but they do it by kind of subtly kicking black men in the balls.
Mm. Mm.
I'm just like, so when I actually do look up the numbers for black men, I got to find an article from a year ago. But when I do, the numbers are so incredibly, so ridiculously higher that it's like, but it's my son's elementary school track race all over again. That's what it is. Everybody's wearing pink ribbons. When you look at the numbers, that's not who's dying.
Mm.
And you attack other men who point out that you're dying more. Interesting.
Mm.
So anyway, man, any last thoughts you want to share on this?
I mean, this is just representative of a whole bunch of different things, right? We just picked one
Mm,
about this bait and switch, or this propaganda that's been around since Bernays in the early 1920s, where you use one thing to bait and switch as you sell something else, and this is just representative of it. So it's actually bigger than just the black women dying during the pandemic. It shows you how they actually go step by step and actually decenter black men and center black women on purpose.
mm,
So it's bigger than that.
man. Well, hey man, I appreciate you coming through, especially since it generated out of an organic conversation, and then and which is usually, and I gotta appreciate BGS on this. We'll have a conversation, and I'll be like, "Hey man, I'm about to start a show. You want to talk about it?" And he'd be like, "All right."
No, it's like okay, I want you to be on the show talking about this with me.
Because these conversations get real good, and
Yeah,
I'm like, this needs to be shared.
yeah.
So,
It's like, let me go ahead and press the button and continue this on air, because we
uh,
we talk about this for like 5 hours.
oh man, I mean, there's when I think back to all the discussions we have that we didn't go on air with, I think about how much it could have been, how much
Hmm.
we missed, could have been shared, all of that.
Well, sometimes if it's going, man, just walk into the office and press the button.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
probably what you probably should start doing.
man. And but I appreciate y'all coming through. Shout out to Officer Faulkner just walking in. Um, but I'm about to close this out. So thank you to BGS. Thank you to all the brothers in the chat. 299 watching
Hit the
across
like.
all the different platforms. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and
Hmm.
Twitter, broadcasting live on all of them. Hit the
Yeah,
like
yeah,
button. Go ahead.
yeah. Hit the like button, please. Let's get it up to 300 likes if we can. And since I'm on and BGS tax, all we ask is $1 holler. The rest is on you. Support your scholar. So if you like what you heard, and we saw a sign actually bring out the sword for like a good 5-10 minutes, which is
There you
rare.
go.
Hassan was chopping. We couldn't get him kind of growling much where he actually take over the whole show, but we did get him going a little bit. So uh, just look at the Cash App. $1 holler. Every dollar counts, especially in this kind of work, because you since Doc has been here, I think since 2018, I think, or so.
Has it been that long? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. 2018 or so. Um, You've seen the change. It's not like you can't say you haven't seen the change, right? You've seen Kevin Samuels blow up. partially because we have PhDs in this space to actually ground this space. And you've seen us go into the political realm and start to
Mhm.
change policy. You see Richard Reeves actually quote a Black Studies, Dr.
Black
Tommy
male
Curry
studies
actually
scholar. Yeah.
mentioned the manosphere. This is Brookings Institute. So you're seeing changes, and basically what you're getting is pennies on the dollar.
Mhm.
This is pennies on the dollar, and you guys don't recognize you're getting political change for pennies. It cost Soros billions of dollars to actually do anything near this, and it costs 25 years and billions of dollars. You're getting change in less than 2 or 3 years with pennies on the dollar. So it's okay that you don't have to give up five, 20, 30, $100. If you do, that's fine. The thing is, all we ask is just, for the seminar, which is pretty standard in the Black studies, right? $1 holler, BGS tax. Hit Doc's Cash App and go ahead and ring it for a dollar or two, which is nothing. It's not even Happy Meal for your kids at McDonald's, okay? This is way more. You're going to get way more bang for your buck. Because trust and believe, Stacey Abrams even mentioned the black male political agenda. She tried to steal it, but thing is, it's gaining traction. You have people all over talking about this. So please contribute. Try to keep this going. I've done all I can to try to keep Doc here, right? I told Doc a long time ago, man, there's no way I can actually pay you for what you do because you're worth way more than that. So, I begged him to come. I literally begged him. I dragged him kicking and screaming. Let's put it that way, to come here. You know
You know what it is,
what?
too. I had mentors who were professors, and I remember when one sat me down. He said, "Well, he said the life of a black professor, especially at a mostly white institution,
Hmm.
is you find yourself waiting years for a black student that has the wherewithal to actually take what you're saying and run with it. You know,
Hmm.
and I remember this was coming from a senior scholar when I was in grad school. He said he basically waits, and it generally takes he might get two out of 10 years,
Mm.
might get two in 10 years. Um, I didn't understand that until I became a professor. One of the things I found is you can actually be a professor and barely anybody talk to you. You can come in, you teach all your classes. You really don't have time to sit and talk, shake hands with people. You teach your classes, you interact with students, and then you find yourself going home by yourself. So there's an isolation there that can happen on one level.
Hmm.
But on another level, when it comes to finding students that can hear you and take what you're saying and run with it, I understood what he meant by
Mm.
two every decade. And you're lucky if you get that one per, which is really like 1 in 5 years. You could say you're lucky to
Mm.
get that. You
Hmm.
are lucky to get that. So YouTube became a space where instead of me waiting for one student every 5 years that might be able to benefit from what I'm saying and take it to the next level, I get a
Hmm.
chance to talk to black men that have like interests, that have like insights, that are curious about the same things. And so I'm grateful that we can have this discussion and brothers are willing to engage. But I want to see this go to a bigger place. I want to see black men be able to operationalize what they're talking about, translate it into policy, translate it into action. Because
Hmm.
if you can have this much attention over who
Okay.
you want to have sex with,
Right.
then how much attention can you get and how much can you generate, even amongst just other black men, if you wanted to frame it that way,
Yeah.
about what's important to you?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Let's
and
do it.
that is the reason that you have somebody like, believe it or not, the black manosphere with the PhDs, with the knowledge we're putting out, with the influence that we have. That's the reason that Tate, Andrew Tate is in prison,
Mm,
influencing the boys in the
yes.
UK,
Yes.
influencing the boys in
Yeah.
in basically in Europe. That's
Yeah.
why he's in prison. He's not in prison because he trafficked some women. That's not why he's in prison. He influences boys, okay? Influences men, and basically there would be no Andrew Tate without Kevin Samuels. Not
Now
at
there
all.
wouldn't be, but one of the things I find interesting is how
Hmm.
many people don't even know that he's black. So there's a kind of racial ambiguity thing that happens with him to where you
Hmm.
got white boys
Hmm.
across multiple countries that are feverishly taking notes on whatever he says. And
Hmm.
I've had grandmothers reach out to me here in America, black grandmothers, talking about how afraid they are of Tate, of Kevin,
Mhm.
of a number of brothers who have broken through into the mainstream and are talking this stuff. But
Mhm.
one of the things I point out to them is that the only reason this has traction is because you guys have created an environment, particularly
Mhm.
on the left, that has alienated boys and men. I mean,
Mhm.
this is why Richard Reeves is saying what he's saying, even though I don't agree with all of it. But the reason Richard Reeves is saying what he's saying about how far men and boys are falling behind across race,
Cross race, yeah.
especially black men, the reason he's saying, and boys, the
Mhm.
reason he can say this is because the left has made it a point to completely eliminate the relevance of
Mhm.
black boys and men from any of the discourses of importance. And what you've left is boys in a vacuum. And I remember this one grandmother I was talking to, I pointed it out in her own family with her own grandson. The
Mhm.
way you talk about him, he's 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 almost a backdrop in your family story.
Mhm.
You talk about his sister, you talk about her mother, you talk about the women, and everything is go, go, cheer, cheer. The men in the family are girl dads, so they're all
Mhm.
focused on the upliftment of girls and boys, and you left
Mhm.
that boy sitting in his room by himself.
Mhm.
And you wonder why he's taking to men that are actually talking to him.
Right.
Boys that are 12, 13 years old that can quote Kevin Samuels.
Right.
I
Yeah.
have never seen that before. You called me at 12 years old. There wasn't too many adults that could hold my attention for longer than 10 seconds unless you were talking about He-Man or Transformers. Short of that, you couldn't get it. But I'm seeing 13-year-old boys
Mhm.
that are quoting from Samuels, quoting from Tate. And it's not, if the takeaway from the story is how misogynist those men are, then you missed the point.
Mhm.
Takeaway should be how
Why?
misandric it was for you to leave those boys in isolation, believing that they were nothing but toxic.
Mhm.
That should have been the goddamn takeaway. You left those boys in it to sit by themselves and ponder their own quote unquote toxicity, and then
Mhm.
wondered why they got tired of being told what they are and actually began to respond to men who were talking to them,
Mhm.
as opposed to women that were talking at them,
Mhm. Or not talking to them at all.
not talking to them at all.
Mhm. Indifference. What's worse than love or hate? Indifference.
Hey, yeah. I've never seen a 15-year-old boy tell me he's not concerned about girls at all. I never heard
Ooh.
that before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Playing video games, he's hanging out with his boys. I mean, I'd never seen this level of social, just kind of abstaining
Indifference.
from the social engagement,
It,
social
it,
indifference. I'd never
social
seen it
indifference.
like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. It's never been this bad. Yeah.
I've never seen it like that.
That's what Reeves is talking about.
Yeah, he is. Because again, in all of this girl power discourse, and I'm
Mhm.
seeing it in so many television shows and movies all over the place, right? It's everything is centering the girls, forwarding the girls. We've heard enough about the boys and the men. We know enough. What you don't
Mhm.
know is what
Mhm.
happens to a generation of boys who have checked out.
Mm.
You think that you just gonna have this superstar powered Justice League of women that's gonna stand up and fix everything because men have been tearing down society with their misogynist patriarchy for centuries. That's the narrative we
Mhm.
hear from feminists. What you don't get is how many men are intricately tied into the infrastructure of this society and operate in ways that you don't pay attention to because all you're fixated on is the boardroom and the CEO position. But from men
Yeah.
fixing toilets to running energy plants to when those men check out,
Yeah. 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 It becomes what? Why the last man? Okay.
oh my God, I was just thinking of that.
Mhm.
I was because they have a new show that's about to come out in March. I don't know if you've heard about this. It's called The Power. Have you heard
Mm-mm.
about this?
Haven't heard about it.
It's with Tony Collette. That's the oh gosh, I forget the Bruce Willis movie she played in where he's a ghost. Um, anyway, her name is Tony
Mhm.
Collette, white woman, and the movie's called The Power. And basically, what it's about is women wake up one day and that now they have the power to electrocute people, right?
Wow.
So
Okay.
what it's supposed to symbolize is now they're dominant physically over men.
Mhm. Mm.
So they're
Okay.
so they're basically, kind of in one sense critiquing men having physical strength, as a factor over women. And they're saying in this new show, women have the natural ability now to, send electricity and shock people. And so now they're physically dominant over men, and you get to see what happens to the world when women take over. That's what this show in March, I believe it is going to be about. Right. And and
Mm.
and I actually think that, if this were a real thing, it would be much more similar to Why the Last Man
Mm.
which was
Yeah.
far more honest than I expected it to be.
Yeah. There's only one way you could tell why the last man and still be true to the story, or halfway true to the story.
I didn't expect him to be true to the story at all. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can look up when we did a review on my channel, Why the Last Man, which is they only ran one season.
Mm-hmm.
It was an interesting show about what happens when all males, even and this is across animals, human beings, everything, when all males on the earth die all at once, except for
Mm-hmm.
one guy.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to see what happens to the entire world when all males die.
Yeah, it got so
It was
bad
going to
even
be,
feminists. Yeah, got so bad even feminists didn't want it to continue.
yeah, they didn't want to, but I thought it was going to be a feminist circle jerk. Like I thought it was just going to be this incredible, super powered,
Mm-hmm.
black white women rock kind of. They were actually far more honest than I expected them to be.
Mm.
Them women were living in utter darkness. It was
Mm.
ridiculous. But anyway, my point though is that when it comes to the withdrawing of males
Mm-hmm.
across age, across class, across occupation,
Mm-hmm.
across national boundaries, if it gets to that point,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people are going to like where that goes. I don't think people are going to like where that goes. Women have held a number of protests about what happens when women check out for a day.
Nobody
I'm not going
noticed.
to see what happens if men decide to do some shit like that. Because here's the problem: men don't demonstrate in the same way women do. They don't hold 1 day activity. Men will check the fuck out and be out.
Yeah.
Men don't
Yeah.
play like that. Men are much more like a light switch. There are not a lot of shades of gray. You're not going to get a partial switch and I'm just going to turn it off for an hour so you can see what happens if I'm not here. No, if men shut down, it's going to take a few generations at best.
Yeah.
Back up again. You do not want to get to that point. It's just like the bear. Was it Bear Grylls?
Yeah. Yeah.
Her name is
Yeah.
the island. You do not want to see what can happen to a group absent men and then act like it doesn't make a difference. You don't want to see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And luckily, that was a show with doctors on hand, with professionals on hand to come in and protect contestants in the show and in in real life.
Mm-hmm. All those women would have died.
Yeah, they would have. They absolutely would have. But and really part of what I'm trying to do here on YouTube is to say this is far more possible than it ever has been, as far as I can see.
Yeah.
The withdrawal of men, which I believe starts with the particular misandry targeted at black men, but
Mm-hmm.
you can see it kind of because black men to me are the canary in the mine.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They're the canary in the mine. And what happens with black men eventually bleeds out to others later. But continue this road. Continue ignoring the treatment of black men and boys.
Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna like where this goes. They already complaining they don't have dating options. I'm like, that's the least of your problems. You keep this shit up. You keep telling
Yeah.
your sons they don't matter. See what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. We see what happens because it happened to black boys. You see what happens. You start telling white boys they're not shit, and guess what happens? They check out.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you actually tell young males in particular, when you allow them to experience how much easier life can be without the responsibility of protecting and providing for a family. I'm not saying that this is how it should be. I mean, I found it rewarding to raise a son. You know what I mean? I found it, um, you know, it did things to me. I appreciated. I learned things about myself. But I'm gonna tell you, it is a lot easier when you don't have to. That's the problem. If you don't have to raise a family, you don't have to protect and provide. Life is easy. Get you an Xbox or whatever game system you like. Get you some
Mm-hmm.
food, and don't even have to cost you a whole lot. Get you a little bit of food. Get you a job that covers your expenses. You'd be surprised how many men can be content with that. But what does that
Yeah.
do to society?
Yeah.
But if he gets
Yeah.
nothing out of the sacrifice, he doesn't even get basic respect, then you're creating a dynamic that you don't see the end of. And I'm just saying, this is where this is going. So
Yeah.
when I talk about what's going on with black men, I talk about it empirically because I think it's being ignored even by black men.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying this is important that we know this because there are too few spaces that actually show you this. And we need to raise the question of what we want to do about it. But it has to start with an understanding of what it is. and what's going on and where we actually are. We need our feet on wherever the ground is, just so we know at the base level what's going on to determine what happens next. Because what we're talking about is potentially society wide, or it actually is already.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not framed that way in mainstream media, but it is already society wide.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Global. It's going global now. It's not even society
global.
wide. Global now.
And our women are so removed from this discussion, they actually think the biggest problem is that not enough of us make six figures. That's what they think the problem is. There's no community that has a preponderance of six-figure earners that are significantly high, statistically speaking, in their own communities. But somehow black men are failing because 70% of us aren't making six figures.
70. I wish it was. I wish it was that. I wish it was that low. You
No,
know.
I'm not even making that number up. That came from interviews that Kevin was doing when he
Yeah.
would ask women, what percentage of the black community do you believe of men
Yeah. Yeah.
are making over six figures? Women were
Yeah.
saying 70%.
70%. Yeah.
But you usually, I mean, even across the United States, I think the best you get is 9 across
Yeah.
race.
Of all across races, it's 9. Yeah.
It's about 9. But
Yeah.
somehow
That's
we're
including
failing because we're not at 70.
that's including the ones that are married. With more married men that actually make six figures because they have to. When you go to single men, the numbers drop.
But but you know when shit gets real,
Mm-hmm.
it gets real when you get fired from your job
Mm-hmm.
and you need groceries
Mm-hmm.
and you got a child tugging on your shirt saying, I'm hungry.
I'm hungry. Yeah.
That's when shit gets real. And I've even noticed, and I'm not even out there pulling like that, but I've noticed women kind of, calling a brother out of nowhere. I'm starting to see a preponderance of the hey big head phone call again, and they're skipping texts. Like I'm getting phone calls in this bitch. We haven't talked in a while. Word,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on? Well,
I'm willing to cut a deal. Yeah.
yeah, I'm willing to cut it, but they don't say that shit outright. See, you just wait. You wait, and then eventually money come up, and you be like,
There was one video, okay, where a chick she was completely honest. She said, "Bills high, food's high,
yes,
gas is high.
yes,
I'm willing to have a roommate. I'm willing to have sex with
yes,
to
she
help
did.
me with these bills." She was completely honest.
Yes, she was.
We'll work
Absolutely.
on a relationship after you get here,
Yep. Yes, she
but
did.
come on.
Mhm.
She was honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the environment. That's where the climate is heading. We're in a
Mm-hmm.
situation now where things are starting to get dire. The pretense, the performance isn't fucking real. People are starting to get hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And when they start to get hungry, they stop looking for six-figure earners and they start looking for men with jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people start to figure out that if you got two incomes, it works better than one,
Mm. Yeah.
which some people have been saying for decades, but didn't nobody want to hear that. This is why, and Will Smith is right. And I saw O'Shea report on it. I saw this has been going around. That's why you got women going to Home Depot looking for men. They are
Yeah, they
going to
are.
Home Depot looking for men.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The new dating site, Home Depot.
yeah. Get
Mm-hmm.
you a tool belt and walk around Home Depot. Watch what happens.
Mm-hmm. He's handy around the house and he makes money.
And this is where things are heading. And you become useful again
Mm-hmm.
when the need gets dire enough. And
Yeah.
this I find fundamentally frustrating because it's so dehumanizing on one level for men and black men in particular to not even be deemed worthy of observation, worthy of reflection
Mm-hmm.
until people get hungry. Then all of a sudden you're important again. But at the end of the day, that's where we are.
Yeah.
That's where we are. Brothers are gonna have to make a decision on how they want to handle that. And the decision I'm hearing is that brothers are like, nah, I'll go look for what I'm looking for elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the
And
one thing about the pandemic. It actually showed you can exist without sex.
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of brothers didn't know they could.
Yeah. They basically you got off the heroin for 6 months.
Ooh, yeah. Oh yeah. Biggest threat to a relationship became a bottle of lotion.
You know what? The thing is, and me and Doc have talked about monk mode, right?
Hmm.
And and the thing is, going through monk mode, it's not going in. It's not easy going into it. Let's put that out of the
Mm-hmm.
get this out of people's minds. Like if you, especially if you're young, it's not the easiest thing to do. What you find out when you come out of it is that you cannot put up with women's attitudes and neediness that you could before.
Changes.
You realize how much emotional labor you actually put into a woman that you didn't know that you did before.
Oh
When
yeah.
we come out of that, it becomes stark, uh, really stark and pretty evident. Like, God damn, like why does she talk about her whatever all day long? I can't take her like I used to.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
I can't take her neediness. I can't take her want to call and text her all the time.
Oh man. The first time after monk mode, when a woman called me to provide the service of listening to her talk about what she ate for dinner for 3 hours,
Hmm. Hmm.
there was a time I did that shit without even thinking. And then it got to a point where I was like, why did I ever do this? And this is long before I'd ever heard of manosphere or any of that. So it wasn't even, it was just something that I was taught you were supposed to do if you were a
Right.
good man.
Yes.
And the pandemic gave a lot of men the option of not doing it and actually
Hmm.
finding out what life could feel like if you didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like, wait a minute, I don't. And then it got worse. By the time brothers started talking about traveling, it was like, wait a minute. So you mean I can actually find somebody somewhat agreeable who
Hmm.
actually, wants to
Hmm.
engage, brother, and I don't have to
Hmm.
deal with this anyway.
Yeah. And what did this Filipino piece say? What you call submission, we call being agreeable.
Damn. Yeah, she be hitting people hard, boy. I got to be hitting people hard, boy. She will, ooh, yeah, she does.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, we thought agreeableness, we thought cooperation was a sin because the
Yeah.
way especially black women talked about it, it was tantamount to slavery.
Yes. Yeah.
What did Anthony Mackie say when he was on that show? Get daddy a sandwich.
Yeah.
What he played it for humor and they laughed at it because they thought it was cute. But at the end of the day, I've had 3-hour arguments over a glass of water. I'm telling you, when you get to a point where you got to have 3-hour arguments over asking for a glass of water,
It's time to go.
it is time to reconsider a lot of shit that you grew up taking for granted. And the fact that more and more men are doing that is scaring the hell out of
Hmm.
a lot of people, but it didn't scare them until things started to dry up. So now we're seeing job cancellations. Now we're seeing reports on inflation and stagflation. And I posted like 3 or 4 different things just in the last 24 hours that were just mind blowing in terms of what it's doing to the economy.
Yeah.
Um, and people are unaware of a lot of this and how far it's. Look at this. Hold on. Banks brace. Hold on. You know what? Let me share this real quick.
Okay.
A few things from my Facebook page. I know you guys probably can't. Damn it. All right. See if I can. There we go. So banks brace for more consumers to fall behind on loans.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big story. Yeah.
That's coming up.
Especially car loans.
Especially car loans. Yeah, we're
Hmm.
seeing it start to happen.
Yeah.
Hold on. I post a lot of stuff. Yeah, you can see this. They're talking about Tate.
Hmm.
This is a brother who posted that to his page. Oh, that brother's son passed away. Shout out to Ricky Smiley, man. Sad to hear.
Wow. Okay.
But millions to see food stamp payment decrease after February.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Now this is listen to this. This is one of the women that wrote in. She said, "I work at a place that accepts EBT and believe this and believe this. I've seen balances with $3,400, $2,800,
Wow.
etc.
Jesus Christ.
I
Good.
asked myself, how could someone who really needs this help have such an astronomical balance?" Uncle
Wow.
Sam explained that one.
Wow. Oh,
Uncle
wow.
Sam about to
Whew.
pull a lot of cards right about
That's more than some people get paid a month. Jesus
now. See that?
Christ.
Yeah,
Wow.
you know, it's
No,
the
no,
perfect
no,
storm.
no wonder they don't need no man with that kind of balance on food stamps.
Exactly,
Jesus Christ.
exactly. It's the perfect storm. More Americans can't afford their car payments than during the peak of the finance. This one actually, I think the full title is interesting.
Hmm.
Um, that something changed. Anyway, the reason I originally posted it is they were saying it's a perfect storm. More Americans can't afford their car payments, and there are more cars in need of repossession than there are people repossessing.
Repossessing. Yeah, I saw that there's a shortage of repossessors
Yeah,
for cars. Yeah.
This is an interesting one I got off of LinkedIn, right? Percentage of 30-year-olds earning more than their parents did at 30, down.
Wow.
This came from a professor on LinkedIn. I don't know him. Professor Scott Calloway said young people are no longer better off economically than their parents were at the same age for the first time in U.S. history. Young people are fed up. They have less than half of the economic security as measured by the ratio of wealth to income that their parents had at the same age. The American dream is that your kids will have a better life than you. That's no longer the case. Professor Scott Galloway.
Oh
That's
yeah. Oh yeah. Scott Galloway, he's on it. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we are. This is the kind of shit we're talking about. This is why you get a phone call out of nowhere. You know, you know,
Hey big head. I missed that with Kevin playing that piece.
yeah,
He used to raise the hairs on my neck every time he played it though.
yeah. I'm gonna do a show on this one. Y'all check this out. EPI.org, Family Budget Calculator. I'm gonna do another show about that. I'm not gonna go into it now, but so at the end of the day, what I'm saying is simply is that this is what's going on in the economy. And people, that's what we've been saying this whole time around policy, around what's going on in the environment. The only thing that changes behavior on a wide scale is the environment. The BGS has been screaming this for years, and it's absolutely true. You can't change behavior on a mass scale without changing the environment.
Yeah.
But if the environment changes, whether you control it or not, you need to be able to see the signs of where it's headed. And when things get economically tight and government starts to withdraw support, especially for women and as far as welfare and these kinds of public resources, they look for replacement. And the thing about it is Black men in particular have been forced to compete with government for decades. And because of our status as a large group, not the individual Black men who are employed and are doing okay. I'm talking about the large collection, many of whom have experienced some form of incarceration, right? When you get Black men, 1 out of 3 having experienced some form of incarceration, that has a lasting impact on the community itself, on Black men as a demographic. But still, you're being forced in the most vulnerable position you're in to compete with the United States government for every woman that you meet. And not only the government, also her network of family, of friends, of associates, people she went to school with. She has a network that you as a male often don't have. And you've been forced to compete. You've been told you weren't shit because you couldn't compete with all these multiple institutions' support of her. But when shit hits the fan, who do you think she goes to first? That's when you get a hey big head text. That's when you get one. I need someone to help me with these bills. I need someone to help me with these kids. And as much as that's played for jokes, I'm not laughing. That's what it is. That's where it is. I'm not saying what one should do or not do. I just want people to read the writing on the wall. When the shit happens, expect the phone to ring.
Oh yeah. Hit you up on Facebook. Hit you up on Twitter. They have email. I'm waiting for carrier pigeon though. I haven't seen that one yet.
Man. But when and the thing about it is Passport Bros doesn't speak to every Black man. It speaks mostly to Black men who can afford to travel.
Yeah, middle to upper middle. Yeah,
it's a very small percentage of brothers that not only can get passports but can actually travel, who can afford to travel. And I don't mean travel once and then a decade later maybe go somewhere else, but who can afford to travel regularly. It's a relatively small percentage, but that's the percentage that women in general claim to want.
Yeah.
So when that demographic starts talking about traveling, people need to pay attention.
Yeah. And they're done, and they're there's a couple things that are happening that women don't even realize. Right? Is that one, remote work is becoming more widely available. So the men that are making over 40, 50, $60,000, maybe not 6 figures, that can actually work remotely or taking advantage. Why? If I can work in my city remotely, I can work in another country remotely.
And I'm gonna tell you, it what changed the game for me is when I started teaching remotely. Which now statistically that doesn't, as far as what students learn, they learn best in person. So I never wanted to do remote teaching because I wanted my students to benefit, but the pandemic forced me to. Right? And I'm still doing it But when you get to that point,
Mm-hmm.
when you can teach from home, when you can open up a laptop,
Mm-hmm.
and be teaching from wherever you are, or working, I should say, because teaching is very specific to me. But I'm saying when you actually figure out that you're able to take your show on the road and work remotely,
Mm-hmm.
changes the game. It changes the game.
Mm-hmm.
Your time is freed in ways you've never known before. I come from blue collar stock. I
Mm.
see family members get up at the rise of the sun, come
Wow.
home 10 hours later, dog tired. When you get to the point where you literally can do your work from a computer from anywhere,
Mm.
and man, don't get me started.
I have I think he actually announces this. Yeah, young Grizzly used to do a lot of his work in person, but as soon as he moved and started doing his work remotely, brother's pulling down $300,000 a year doing remote work. He calls it overemployment.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow. Well,
So it can work for you, and
it,
it is changing the game. And the thing is, he's one person that he could easily do his work from any part of the globe with an internet connection. So you have people like him, and more people like him that make that kind of money. They can do it from someplace else, and that's what they're afraid of.
well, yeah, and they didn't expect anyone to make a movement out of it either. But again, black men
Mm,
didn't invent this movement. Now, individual black men may have traveled, men in the military may have traveled, but the first time I've heard of anybody in the community making a movement out of
mm-hmm,
dating internationally, it was black women.
mm,
And I know because I took my wife, or before she was my wife, I took her to go see that damn movie, How Stella Got Her Groove Back. And I watched these women tell men they ain't shit and that they needed to find young men in other countries because that's how bad they had it. I watched them make a movement out of that
mm-hmm,
and then turned around 20 years later and had nerve to be upset when men said, okay, well, what's good for the gander can be good for the goose.
mm-hmm,
Now it's a
mm-hmm.
problem. Here's
Yeah, because they say I own you, Negro.
Yeah, but here's the question: at
Mm-mm.
what point did black men raise hell when black women said they were going to travel internationally for love or relationships or whatever?
Never.
I never heard it. There
Mm-mm.
was no collective response from black men. None. Every time they celebrated when Meghan Markle or anybody else married a prominent white man, I never heard black men in the aisles raising hell.
Mm,
Tell me how that worked.
mm. Yeah.
Anyway, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming through today.
All right, Doc.
All right, I'll let you.
Yeah.
All right. All right, people. I appreciate your patience. I had to get something off my chest tonight, I guess. I didn't even know I had to, but anyway, thank you for the support. Like, share, subscribe, join, and donate, support the channel. We'll continue to keep bringing it to you. And I appreciate all of you in the chat. Please continue to comment. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know your experiences. Let us know if the things we're talking about are happening in your world in one way, shape, or form. And let us know how. All right. Other than that, y'all have a good night. Peace.